Hello and welcome to iGCSE Success. If you're new here, welcome. I post content here on YouTube to prepare students for their Cambridge First Language English exam. And if that's what you're looking for, be sure to check out my other videos where I break down the core skills needed to succeed with First Language English. Now, lots of people have been asking me to break down the newer sub-questions that are a part of the new paper, and that video is coming probably Wednesday or Thursday, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. However, for today's video, I just wanted to look at the March 2020 First Language paper, specifically the writer's effect question. And if you're sat there somewhat confused, this paper is only for certain centres in India because they have a tighter turnaround for college applications. This is the second paper to be officially released by Cambridge. So I thought it would be useful to go through at least one question. And of course, in terms of the May-June papers that most of you were due to sit as soon as they are released to teachers, i.e. put on the Cambridge Support Hub, I will be sure to go through those papers as well. Without further ado, let's get on with today's video. Hi guys, so what you are looking at is the writer's effect question from the March 2020 paper. It is the most recent paper we have, and I just thought it'd be useful to go through the writer's effect question. You guys seem to really enjoy these videos, and hopefully you learn a lot from them. In my experience, the writer's effect question probably is the question which presents quite a few difficulties for a number of students sitting the First Language English paper. So I won't be reading the entire insert, but I certainly will be reading both paragraph 2 and 4. But first, let's have a read of the question. So paragraph 2 is the first paragraph you're directed to, and that begins "as you might" and is about Adam's progress through training. So we know that our first response is going to have to focus on that. Paragraph 4, beginning "you turn up." This describes the daytime work as a junior doctor in the hospital. And of course, I'm sure you're all familiar with the wording of the question, but just in case, explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. Choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Your choices should include the use of imagery. Write about 200 to 300 words. Take that with a pinch of salt. Most students do tend to go over that word count. You are not going to be penalised. And of course, 15 marks are available for the content of your answer. So let's begin by reading paragraph 2 and then discussing the overall effect. As you might imagine, the training was hard. Learning every aspect of the human body, plus each possible way it can malfunction, is a fairly gargantuan undertaking. But the buzz of knowing I'd be a doctor one day, such a big deal, you get to literally change your name like a superhero, propelled me towards my goal. When it was finally time to step onto the ward, armed with all this exhaustive knowledge and turn theory into practice, it came as a blow to discover that I'd spent a quarter of my life at medical school and wasn't remotely prepared for what came next. So of course the first step is understanding what the writer is trying to achieve, what they are trying to, convey to the reader. Hopefully you can see that Adam has an almost idealistic, childlike impression of what he thinks being a doctor is going to entail. Of course, what he hopes and initially expects is very different to his everyday reality. So my 3 quotes are going to link to this idea. So as you can see, I've selected my images already just to speed up the process. I don't really want to make another 20-minute video, and I want to keep this as short as possible. So the first idea that I've chosen is this idea, that Adam acknowledges training as being a gargantuan undertaking. So on one hand, he recognizes how difficult it's going to be, but then we are presented with this rather, childlike image of Adam likening a doctor to that of a superhero. And the last quote I've selected is Adam being armed with exhaustive knowledge. So again, he seems ready, but is he? So now we are ready to use the 5 steps to success. And if you watch my other videos, I go into quite a bit of detail in terms of what each step is. But just to remind you of these steps, I will insert a slide now. And should you wish to go over the steps, just pause the video. Now, these steps are particularly useful if you are a student who perhaps struggles structuring a well-organized response. Now let's read a model I prepared earlier, again just to speed up this video a little bit. Notice the phrases in red, and I would really recommend you to keep these phrases in your response just to help with the overall structure, that fluidity that these responses need. So of course, step one is starting with the overall effect of the language. That being, the overall effect of the language creates a contrast between Adam's idealistic image of what he thought training to be a doctor would entail and the actual reality. The writer begins by describing Adam's training as being a gargantuan undertaking to highlight the clear challenges Adam is having to face. Then the zoom in technique, of course. The writer's use of the adjective gargantuan evokes feelings of Adam's initial apprehension. He acknowledges that training is going to present some difficulties and it's going to take a lot of commitment in order to succeed. The writer then goes on to describe that, despite these challenges, the thought of being just like a superhero is enough to get Adam through his training. The writer's use of the simile here creates an almost childlike fantasy, a world in which he has extraordinary powers and has the primary goal of making the world a safer and better place. Lastly, the writer goes on to describe Adam being armed with exhaustive knowledge to prepare himself for the practical side of the job. The writer's use of the verb armed creates a military image of Adam being equipped and ready to battle, putting his theory into practice. However, the futility of this come the end is clear. Despite the theoretical side to the job, it seems the actual reality of it is very different to what he envisioned. Now let's read paragraph 4, and again I've already selected my images just to speed the process or speed this video up a little bit. So paragraph 4, you turn up every morning for the ward round where your whole team of doctors troops past each of their patients. You trail behind like a hypnotized duckling, your head cocked to one side in a caring manner, noting down every pronouncement from your seniors. Then you spend the rest of your working day, plus generally a further unpaid 4 hours, completing dozens, sometimes hundreds of tasks, filling in forms, making phone calls, not really what are trained so hard for. So guys, hopefully from paragraph 4, you can see that the writer, I guess, is trying to convey how Adam's routines, or at least some of them, seem quite tedious and pointless for Adam, or certainly in his eyes anyway. And with that in mind, let's take a look at the second model. So again, guys, following the 5 steps to success. The overall effect of the language seems to depict how Adam views having to do a ward round every morning as being a futile and monotonous activity. The writer begins by describing Adam as trailing behind the other doctors like a hypnotized duckling. I love that image. The writer's use of the simile here, particularly with the use of the adjective hypnotize, evokes feelings of passivity and disorientation. It seems to suggest that Adam views this particular exercise as being both unpurposeful and unhelpful. Although Adam acknowledges the futility of it, he simply has to follow orders and the day-to-day routines he is expected to carry out, much like a duckling would do when learning from their mother. The writer then goes on to describe the doctors cocking their heads to one side in a caring manner. The writer's image here seems to create an air of insincerity to the job. The suggestion seems to be that the doctors tilt their heads to give the impression that they are listening to any concerns that they hear, although it's clear they have very little interest at all. Lastly, the writer goes on to focus on the hundreds of tasks which doctors often have to do. The writer's image here highlights Adam's dissatisfaction with the administrative side of the job. Although some may read this as being exaggerated, it clearly highlights how overwhelming Adam feels and how the relentless stream of paperwork seems like an almost impossible task to keep up with. It's clear to see how his initial expectations of the job are very different from his everyday reality. And that's all from me today, guys. Again, I hope this video has been useful for you. If you are liking this content that I'm posting on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you Wednesday or Thursday. Until next time, bye-bye.